All right, good morning, everyone. This is JJ Risha with Pismo Ventures and the Global Startup Symposium. Thank you for being part of the symposium. It has been absolutely fantastic week, and last week it has been also really great week for early access for startups and for investors as well. Um, what we're doing this week, well, today is really it's a deep tech, and what we've done is we've included a blockchain as part of the deep tech. So David is going to discuss not just blockchain, but how blockchain is affecting AI and Internet of Things as well, IoTs, and the extended reality. And at the end, he also is going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Um, but to give you an update on the symposium, so today is Deep Tech, which is a combination of many technologies, including climate tech, clean tech, and other deep techs. Um, and the presentation starts at 1 p.m. today. Um, and I think we have not sure exactly, but we have about 20 companies that will be on today for Deep Tech. Um, Tomorrow is another day with webinars in the morning. We have two webinars in the morning. One is on how to incentivize your team. And then the other one is what investors look for when it comes to your company before you need to answer some questions, and you need to be ready before you go out and start looking for investments. And then in the afternoon tomorrow, we have basically all other technologies other than AI, life science, and deep tech. All that starts at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Again, thank you all very much for being part of the Global Startup Symposium. I'll say one more thing. The symposium will still be open all next week for you to still connect and engage with between startups and investors. And everything we're doing is recorded, so you can go into the auditorium at any time. Well, it will be like this recording for this webinar will not be available until later today or maybe early tomorrow morning. But all the webinars and all the presentations will be available and have been recording and continue to be recorded. And you can access them by logging in and then going into the auditorium. Thank you again. Dave, it's all yours. Take it from here.
Thank you, JJ. Yeah, this is Dave Carlson, and I'm very pleased, really honored to be part of the Global Startup Symposium. So let's get started. I know some of the participants are venture capitalists, so you may recognize Dilbert. The Dilbert cartoon, and in this case, one of the characters is saying, yeah, blockchain, that's the magic that will make venture capitalists swoon. Our intent today is to put blockchain in its appropriate place so no one needs swoon. Outline these 6 topics, and then I added a postscript on cryptocurrencies simply because it's been a wild ride since the election. So first, the blockchain basics. I think it's important to point out that blockchain was in fact created by Satoshi Nakamoto, who is yet to be identified, but it was created specifically to create a currency. So the first application of the blockchain was Bitcoin. Unfortunately, it is a platform and an application. And that's confusing because since 2008, there have been more than 1,000 blockchain platforms. And from that point on, we've been careful to differentiate between the platform, for example, SAP is a platform, and the application. So the application of SAP to a particular company is an application on the SAP platform. So blockchain is a platform that was created specifically for currencies. But since then, it's been applied to a massive collection of important applications. But the basic thing is that we all know what ledgers are, and they're the fundamental ingredient of the world as we know it. And they're very easy to conceptualize. Starts with a balance, a whole bunch of updates, and then at any one point in time, we can look at the ending balance, but we can watch as things happen in the ledger. And ledgers have a lot to do with ownership. So whether it's a bank account or property, ledgers have to do with who owns what and how that is changing. Now, this is maybe the most important slide in the description of blockchain. Virtually everything every computer system that we touch and have touched over time has this centralized architecture shown on the left. One or a few computers control the rest. But there is huge advantage in having decentralized, where a whole bunch of computers are connected to each other. And the blockchain environment is a decentralized environment. So that's good news that it has some advantages. The bad news is that to get the advantages, these advantages, scalability, elimination of any kind of control middleman, to get these advantages, you have to put up with disadvantages. So for example, if I have 200 decentralized computers on a network, the main threat is that someone, a bad guy, will join as a malicious peer. And because of the architecture, that bad guy has access to all of the other decentralized computers. So whereas an architecture of peer-to-peer computers is very advantageous, the problem is there is massive risk that a bad guy can go in and hack the other computers on the decentralized network. The big news is blockchain technology overcomes the disadvantages. That's essentially, when you have this arrangement on the right, blockchain, in fact, takes away the risk. So a quick reminder, platform versus our application. Blockchain is a platform. And the problem is that Bitcoin, the word Bitcoin is applied to both the platform and the application. Since that time, however, we've gotten more rigorous. And when we talk about various blockchain platforms, we're generally careful. So for example, Ethereum, which was the second major blockchain platform, has a token called Ether. And so Ethereum is a platform, Ether is a cryptocurrency application. So blockchain is a general term using specific technologies, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And a useful way to think about blockchains is that as we started out and pointed out ledgers, transactions are recorded on electronic ledgers. And we also then observe that if ledgers cannot be changed, we would consider them immutable, that is permanent. And the way the technology works, you can detect a compromise in the integrity. And so a useful way to think about them is that they're really very special versions of ledgers. But in order to do this, and you'll see in a minute a way where the technology fits into the process, Satoshi Nakamoto put together in 2008 a white paper that described the technologies that needed to be implemented to make sure that one member of the decentralized computing network cannot go in and modify the blockchains on other members of the network. So some of the underlying technologies are these incredibly complicated mathematical concepts, and we're not going to go into them primarily because we don't have time. I spend 3 hours in my course at the University of California, Irvine, talking specifically about the technologies and the process by which one takes a batch of transactions and creates a blockchain block. So the creation of a block from a batch is called mining. And the incredible amount of mathematics necessary for mining takes huge, huge amounts of power and computing power and electrical power. And as this says, Bitcoin mining now consumes more energy than the entire country of Norway. I have produced 4 11-minute videos on YouTube to talk just about the underlying technology. And when I spend time in my class at the University of California, I use the following slide 18 times. That is, I'll go through and say, well, we do this to a batch to make it a block. And then I say, but that should be enough, right? And the answer is no, it's more complicated than that. So I use this slide 18 times to get through the technology that is employed in blockchains. So just as the quote says, we do not have to understand the physics of internal combustion to know that a truck can be very useful. So my assertion is we do not have to understand the underlying technologies and the mining operations to know that blockchains can be helpful. And the world has now deployed thousands of applications on blockchain platforms. I'll describe how it works in blockchain. And here you see a mining operation, and every one of these in the rack is a computer. And those computers all fit together for one purpose: to turn a batch of transactions into a well-formed block on the blockchain network. And as the bottom quote says, the network is far more powerful than all of the top 500 independent supercomputers around the world. This is another operation. This one happens to be in Russia. And again, every one of these racks is filled with computers to do exactly one thing, and that is to take a batch and create it and turn it into a block. So in this case, the first computing node that finds that is able to create a block is the winner, and it gets rewarded with blockchain. Until last April, that reward was 6.5 Bitcoins for winning the race. In April, it was cut in half to 3.25. But still, with blockchain at $100,000, the winner of that race now would get $325,000 for creating a block from the batch. And so if you were able to win every time, every 10 minutes, you could create $45 million a day in fees, which is enough, certainly enough to make the investment profitable. But and this bottom is something that concerns the world, and that is that every one of the nodes that is not successful throws away their efforts as soon as they get a good block, and they start over on the next block. So 99% of the efforts basically are wasted. Now, at the present time, if you look at all the computers employed to solve the blockchain Bitcoin block, there's 71 quintillion hashes per second, an astounding amount of computing power. So I like to use the word batch and block. So a batch of transactions, ownership transactions, transactions against the ledger. A batch is submitted to these 300 or 400 decentralized computing facilities, and those computing facilities then have a race to see who can find a good blockchain block. And so this is the definitive diagram. You see the transactions entering the process, and then this extremely complex, that's what we would call mining. And so the transactions go through a mining operation and get to create a block. And part of the cleverness of blockchain is that every new block has incredible encryption, but it also has a reference to the previous block. And in fact, in all of the blockchains that run Bitcoin, every block ties all the way back to the Genesis block. That's the very first block that was ever created. And from that point on, block after block after block was attached to the chain. So blockchains are brand new platforms. This Satoshi Nakamoto was extraordinarily clever. The white paper is less than 20 pages, and he outlines the process by which one takes batches, and it can be a batch of car titles, it can be a batch of ownership, it can be a batch of Bitcoin exchanges, but those batches are then turned into blocks. And the way we use ledgers is just basically on everything. Ownership and student loans and debt, and on and on and on. So the blockchain technology allows us to build ledgers in brand new ways. So the big news is blockchain technology reinvents the ledger itself. That is, those of us in my age group remember when ledgers were stored in big tubs on paper. And when you went to check out of a hotel, they went into the back room, they grabbed a piece of paper that indicates when you came in, the charges since you came in, and your ending balance. It was basically paper-based. And now blockchains reinvent that whole process. So there'll be a couple of minutes at the end for questions, but let me go quickly through the rest of the agenda. Now, I have seen other presentations to this symposium, several on in artificial intelligence, and they've been really good. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time except as a reminder. But this is one issue of using artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. In this case, you see the coffee maker is tied to the network. So AI refers to a highly complex collection of issues. And I hope some of you were able to attend a couple of the excellent sessions yesterday on artificial intelligence. But these descriptors have been used now to begin to understand what goes on in an environment of artificial intelligence, everything from ChatGPT to other implementations. Those of you with computer backgrounds would recognize that the whole world of AI is filled with algorithms, and those algorithms address large language models and create, in some sense, regurgitate new collections of thoughts and concepts from the AI base. So a quick example of machine learning, which is really at the heart of artificial intelligence. This is a real world issue. That is, there's a collection of problems that are solved with linear programming. And they have the form of optimizing a result given a set of constraints. So a really good example is this: create the best diet for elementary school children with the lowest cost. And into that problem, you insert a whole bunch of information about food and nutritional ingredients, and then you run an application that's called a linear program to solve it. And several years ago, there were 6 well-known techniques. So you could solve a linear program with using several different mathematical techniques. The problem at that time was you can't tell which technique is going to be the best one for any particular application. You just can't look at it and say, oh, technique number 3 will be the best. So the solution was to build a program that learned, given a particular application, a particular problem to solve, a program that learns which one of the 6 techniques got the solution fastest. So it would do an iteration and then say which one produced the result closest to the final result, and then increase the probability of using that technique for the next iteration. Again, linear programming can have as many as 100 or 200 iterations to finally get to the final solution. So this describes an actual machine learning technique that was built and tested. And the question was that 58 years ago, 35, 23, or 10? Well, the answer is it was actually 58 years ago, because I was the one who built it in graduate school at the University of Michigan. So that's almost 6 decades ago. So what has happened since? So why has it taken so long to implement artificial intelligence and machine learning? And the answer is because the technology required to solve such problems, it needs to be far more robust than it was almost 60 years ago. And the technology that needed to be robust was computing processing, massive amounts of inexpensive storage, and the ability to collect and move information. So this then looks at how much progress there have been on these 3 ingredients. So the first one is the computing process. So in the last 50 or 60 years, computing power is up per dollar of investment 1 million-fold. That is, what was $1 million when I was in graduate school is now basically $1. And if you look at this chart, it shows the massive progress in computing power for a particular level of investment. And those of you who have been around computing know that Moore, one of the founders of Intel, suggested 60 years ago that computing power per dollar would go up something like double every 18 to 24 months. So that's called Moore's Law, and it really isn't a law, it's an assertion. But the fact is, this is what's happened to computing power in the last 30 or 40 years. So the first element of getting artificial intelligence mature is computing power. The second is storage. And again, note the logarithmic scale. This is the cost of computer memory. And now, because of the cost of memory, we have massive amounts of data, 1 billion data points a day from the various activities that we go through. So that's the second element of what we needed to move toward artificial intelligence. The first being computing power, 1 million to 1, and memory and storage, which is also at least 6 or 7 orders of magnitude better than it was 40 years ago. And then finally, the ability to collect and move information, because you can have terabytes of information sitting someplace, but if you can't get at it quickly and apply the new massive amounts of computing power to it, it just sits in one place and doesn't have much value. So again, the third element is the speed at which one can move the massive amounts of data. And you can see from this chart that just in the last 20 years, there's been a 32,000-fold increase in moving data around. So those 3 elements, computing power, massive amounts of inexpensive storage, and the ability to move that information around. Those three elements all changed massively in the last several decades, and that allows us to implement artificial intelligence. A few example, one that I happen to like a lot is what I can now do in my car. Actually, my car has the option of calling into a central facility, which is basically a bot, and I just say what the address is, and it downloads the instructions to that address into my car. And it actually is easier than just entering it myself, because I can just talk to the car. It goes into a central facility, and in less than a second, it transfers the instructions on how to get to that into the car itself. And then I push a button that says go, and it helps me get to where I need to go. So that is a phenomenal application of this technology. Also, we know that the world of electronic commerce is taking information about us and our inclinations and our purchasing power, and it is recommending. So, for example, I'm on a couple of movie streaming sites, and based on what I have watched in the past and evaluated, it gives me new recommendations. Also, when I was in graduate school, the notion of natural language processing, there's a paper that I participated in, and the conclusion of the paper was that because speech is so individualistic, the conclusion of the paper was there was no way that we would ever have computing power that could differentiate between one person's speech and another. And what we didn't know at that time, again, 60 years ago, was that the computing power would grow so exponentially that what we thought was an impossible task turned out to be, with 1,000,000 times the computing power, a relatively easy task. So natural language processing is another example of the use in artificial intelligence. And then we've seen facial detection, where it seems like an impossible task, but I was part of a facial detection company, and we were able to successfully identify someone at 300 yards away. So it really quite is amazing technology, and somebody spent a lot of time figuring out what dimensions of the face, how far apart the eyes are, the edge of the mouth, the ears, all of that stuff, such that by putting those measurements into a system and then comparing with a new face, you could actually reliably get recognition. So the last major topic then is this whole notion of Web 3.0, where much of this kind of comes together in a new constellation of power. So one can describe the web environment, certainly 1.0, the read-only web. And then, so that was using the web basically to look things up. And we still use the web a lot to do that. And then the read-write web, which means I can post, I can send things to other people. And so that was Web 2.0, and Web 3.0 is really the next generation that relates to ownership and taking action. When I teach, I use this book, Blockchain Revolution by Don and Alex Tapscott, as the fundamental textbook for how the blockchain was going to influence the world. I happen to know both Don and Alex, and this has been an incredibly successful book. It is the seminal book for the entire blockchain academic world for sure. Millions of copies sold, 18 different languages. But this really related, this is several years old, and so it started the analysis and concepts around how blockchain would actually be used. So they, I think they went out on a limb several years ago and said, this blockchain is not just for creating Bitcoin. This blockchain is a new way of talking about ownership and ledgers. And this book then is the seminal work on how blockchain would be ultimately power an awful lot of new stuff. Recently, then they've published a new book, well, the son, Alex, called Web 3.0. And he asserts that there are 4 technologies that come together. Blockchain, AI, Internet of Things, and extended reality is how he would say that Web 3.0 is coming together to create new opportunities. So the Internet of Things is a concept that's maybe 8 or 9 years old, but it's it's the idea that if you have a lot of computing power that's cheap, that's inexpensive, you can put that computing power into devices, everything from refrigerators to traffic lights. So it's a matter of both size and expense. And as the cartoon showed, that there was a coffee pot that was tied into the Internet of Things. And we know that now there are refrigerators that can talk to ovens, that can talk to microwaves. And so this whole notion that one can put computing power inside of a lot of other things is really only 7, 8, 9 years old, but it is beginning to have a huge impact. Again, my car sends me more emails than my family. So you know you're trapped in cyberspace when you get more emails from your car than your family. But part of that is the computing power that has been distributed into multiple devices. So devices have computing power installed in them. They connect, again, because of the cost of computing and communications has gone down. And the whole notion of cloud computing, you can then put things into the cloud and then send it out selectively. I'm on the board of a company in Northern California, and we have cardiac patches. And this is exactly how our patches communicate to the cardiologist. The patch uploads into the cloud downloads into a processing center, and the processing center then runs programs to detect abnormalities in the cardiac signals, and then those go to the cardiologist who is watching that patient. The fourth in the Capscot Web3 is extended reality. That is where you literally look at things real or you look at things enhanced. And so a quick example, and this 2 or 3 years ago, this would have been an absurd example. That is, one could not imagine this happening. But imagine that a city is anticipating a natural disaster, and the challenge is to get as many people out of the way of that disaster, like a hurricane or a tornado, as quickly and efficaciously as possible. Well, the blockchain would allow one to look at the owners of property and the identification. AI would then allow one to predict where in the city's traffic patterns would be the most congested. Again, if you have something coming from the west is different than something coming from the east or south. And the IoT then allows you to go in and specifically address the traffic lights in a particular intersection. Would allow you to have to shut off certain access routes and emphasize green lights on the access routes that allow you to get out. And then extended reality would allow people monitoring the environment actually to look and see either from the sky or from particular intersections as to what's actually happening. And by actually seeing what's happening in this extended reality, you could then shift the traffic light signals to enhance the evacuation. So that would be an example of how one would use all of the 4 elements in Web 3.0. So until a week ago, this was the foundation of the project. But since the election of President-elect Trump and the emphasis on cryptocurrencies that he has included, and his direct quote is, "We will become the nation of cryptocurrencies." I decided that it would be reasonable in this deep dive on technology to take a look at what's going on with cryptocurrencies. So if you step back a little bit and ask, well, how do cryptocurrencies make sense? How do they get value? Well, there are only 3 ways. The first way, and the most prominent way that cryptocurrencies have gotten high valuation, is speculation. I buy at $1 and hope you will pay me $2 later. It's real easy. There is another way for a cryptocurrency to add value, and that is as a utility. In the Ethereum blockchain, if you build an application on top of Ethereum, you pay for that application with the Ethereum token called Ether, E-T-H-E-R. And then the third way is an asset class. And we know asset classes are anything from classic cars to paintings to real estate to stock to bonds. All of those are asset classes. And so the question of cryptocurrencies related to asset class is, under what conditions might a cryptocurrency be an asset class? Again, I repeat this, the invention of the blockchain by Satoshi Nakamoto was for the exact purpose of providing a platform for a new kind of currency. which he called Bitcoin. And I think few people understand that there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. So if the world is in fact adopting the specific cryptocurrency Bitcoin, then within 4 years, there will be no more Bitcoins mined. And at the present time, Bitcoin is worth about $2 trillion. Now, to put that in perspective, it's worth noting that for the last couple of months, the collective value of Bitcoin is actually more than the collective value of all silver in the world. Now, it's still 1/20th of the value of gold, but it certainly has made a huge increase in market cap. And then you see the next 4 cryptocurrencies: Ethereum, XRP, Tether, and Solana. And they go down rather rapidly. And again, Bitcoin is the most prominent of the cryptocurrencies. And again, this shows that at the present time, a little less than 20 million of the 21 million have been mined. And remember, mining is nothing more than taking a batch and applying the mathematics to find a block, and that's called mining. So there are about 1 million coins left to be mined. And we're mining at the rate of about 450 a day. So within a few years, there will be no more Bitcoin in existence. So as you look at the value of Bitcoin, up to this point, it's been based on speculation. But when the supply gets very more limited, more activities will be driven by the price of Bitcoin. And again, tokens are used to buy things, and then the question of asset class. So until recently, in the last few years, Bitcoin was way too volatile to be an asset class. So you would never put your money into stocks if they could lose 60% of their value within a week. And Bitcoin has been so volatile that it has not been considered, or certainly was not considered 5 or 6 years ago, as a viable asset class. Now, however, huge financial institutions are acquiring and storing Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana, actually, and so has far more value. So this is the reason that until a few years ago, Bitcoin would not be considered an asset class. All of this indicates that it had gone from 60-some thousand and lost more than 50% of its value within a year. And again, you would not put your money thinking it was safe in this kind of asset. However, if you viewed Bitcoin as an asset class 10 years ago, but no one did, it would be the asset class that had gained the most percentage of value in the last 10 years by a huge amount. And as institutions start buying Bitcoin, and again, the United States is the 5th largest owner already without the Trump presidency. The United States is the 5th largest owner of Bitcoin. Brazil last week just made a massive investment in Bitcoin as part of their treasury. So the conclusion is Bitcoin is here to stay. It continues to be volatile. In the last, well, since the election, it's been volatile, but in a good way. It's gone from about 60,000 to 100,000. But the likelihood of going back and losing the 60 or 70% is extremely unlikely. Again, because two things are happening. There's more and more acceptance of it as an asset. And second, its supply will be limited. So that's the end of the postscript on cryptocurrencies. I'll now take a look at the chat.
I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A. I've been asking if there's anyone has a question. Thank you so much, Dave. That was really great. Very comprehensive overall on blockchain and on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency. There's few things I did not know, which is really, really great. I mean, the one thing I didn't know, which is a really big deal, is that there is a limit. I didn't know that the 21 million is the end. So, which is
And
really,
again, if it's used by several countries as a backup to its fiat currency, the value's got to go up because the demand is going to go up and the supply is limited.
yeah. Do the other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, do they also have an upper limit?
No, they do not.
Okay.
And it's hard to imagine what was in Satoshi Nakamoto's mind. But he set the upper limit again, I guess, imagining that at some point in time it would be to supplement or replace regular currencies, and he didn't want to fall into the pattern of if you need more, you just print more.
Yeah, quite interesting. And it seemed like he probably never thought that it was going to be so successful and many operations around the world deploying thousands of computers to actually mine it. He thought it probably the 21 million wouldn't end for centuries.
Yeah.
So
Again, the halving occurs after a certain number of blocks have been created. So if in his mind it would take 10 or 15 years to create 10,000 blocks, then of course for 100 years he wouldn't run out.
oh
Uh,
yeah, that makes sense.
but now every 10 minutes there's a new block, and it's fairly predictable as when the last million Bitcoin will be mined. And again, the process is called halving. Until last April, it was 6.5 Bitcoins per block. A few years earlier, it was 13 Bitcoins per block. And after another collection of blocks have been created, it'll drop to 1.75 Bitcoins per block. And then they're about gone. So in the next
Yeah.
4 or 5 years, all the Bitcoin will have been mined.
All right, so there is a question. So I know you explained it, but it is not easy to understand. Especially someone is new to this. So the question is, can you please define mine again? What is the mine? Back to the block and the batch. If you
Yeah,
can
let me
give
go
a real,
back to this
yeah.
fundamental. This is my favorite diagram. And this part here that is taking a batch of transactions. Think of 10,000 checking account transactions. So the raw form is I got a bank account and how much money left it. And this part, that is the application of these mathematics to create this immutable block, that's mining. This is exactly the definition of mining. That is taking a batch, applying a bunch of mathematics to it to create a very unique block. That's what mining is.
So
And
so maybe explain also what is the block. So if I have given a practical example, if I have 100 bank accounts and that's my batch, um, and then I apply some mathematics to it, the outcome is a block. What is the block in relations to that batch?
it is a mathematical implementation of the information in that batch. Uh, so I have 10,000 transactions. I put them through this process and I come with a block. And this process, by the way, is hashing and maybe I need to talk about what hashing is. Hashing is taking a string of characters and applying mathematics such that it is a brand new form, but you cannot go backwards. That is, I can't take a hashed transaction and go back to what it is. So by hashing it, I have a unique representation of what that transaction looks like. And I hash and I hash and I hash. And that's why at the present time, the network, the Bitcoin network, does 70 quintillion hashes per second, because that's one of the underlying mathematical transformations that occurs between a batch and a block. And again, we have in Bitcoin 300 or 400 collections. Go back to this. So this is a mining operation. Its sole purpose is to take a single batch and create a new block. So you begin to understand how much computing power it takes to actually do this.
Okay, so let's one more question around that for me and others to understand. So everybody's racing to create a block from that same batch. Is that correct?
That's correct. The batch is sent out to 400 different installations, and then they immediately start the race to create a block from that batch of transactions.
And the speed of the race is dependent on the mathematical algorithms and hashing and the computing power at the same time.
That's correct. When you get it's amazing. When you get all done with all the hashing, you have to find a particular number called a nonce, N-O-N-C-E. And by applying that number to what you have up to that point, you have to create a hash that has 15 leading zeros. So the probability of doing a hash with 15 leading zeros is like 1 to the 17th against you. So that's why all this power is used. It's trying to find the final ingredient to create a new block. And again, I've got 4 11-minute segments on YouTube that describe the mathematics, and it's astoundingly complex.
Okay.
And when you get all said and done, the final step, it's amazing. The final step between transaction and block is extensive trial and error. So you're all done, and then you keep trying to find a nonce. That is something that you can hash with the hashes you have up to that point that gives you a good block, which currently is 15 leading zeros.
Very interesting. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. Dave, that was fantastic. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
um,
Let me put up my contact information in case there anybody. Um,
there you go.
yeah. So
All right. Well, if you have any questions for Dr. Carlson, please reach out to him via email. And you can always reach out to me, and happy to provide his information as well. Again, we don't have any webinar after this one. Today, we only have one webinar by Dave. We will resume the presentations at 1 p.m. Pacific time. There should be some great companies, especially Climate Tech and Clean Tech. Please tune in at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Dave, much appreciated. That was fantastic.
oh, JJ, I'm honored to be part of it, as you know. So we'll see you soon.
Talk soon. See you soon. Have a great
Bye.
one, everyone.